All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I got a kind of a long introduction here to introduce all these artists. I'm going to start with our moderator, Armando Minjarez. Armando is a Mexican interdisciplinary artist, designer, and community organizer. His practice is guided by themes of displacement, collaboration, and empowerment to create platforms for social change, creative expression, and liberation for racialized communities. In 2018, Armando curated and directed the Horizontes Project, an artist-driven community engagement art project that worked to connect the Latino North End and African-American Northeast neighborhoods in North Wichita. They're bisected by large grain elevators along the industrial corridor. The project included 21 murals, hiring 32 artists, 84% of which were artists of color. The Horizontes Project was a 2017 Night Cities Challenge winner. Armando has also been awarded grants by the Puffin Foundation, the Wichita Cultural Funding Committee, and the Kansas Humanities Council. He's exhibited nationally and internationally and serves on Wichita's Design Council and on the board of directors for Harvester Arts. Currently, Armando is focusing most of his time in expanding his Del Norte ceramics line and working on public art commissions in his Wichita studio. Armando and I developed the proposal for Adelante Juntos, Forward Together, to bring Natalia Gallego back to Wichita to paint a mural on the Dirksen Amphitheater a couple of years ago. We wanted to activate the amphitheater while also connecting the Horizontes Project with the university's efforts of becoming a Hispanic-serving institution. Galeo's here all month painting, and you can join us May 3rd from 4:30 to 7 p.m. for the mural unveiling and pre-Cinco de Mayo celebration at the Dirksen Amphitheater. All right, and now to introduce our panelists. And I realized as you guys were meeting each other tonight that you don't all know each other already. It's always surprising to me. So as I introduce you, please kind of put your hand up so people know who we're talking about. So first up, Rick Dunwoody is a Native American Pawnee, Oto, and Wyandotte visual artist, skateboarder, and muralist. He was selected for a 3-person artist cohort for the City of Wichita Harvester Arts NEA Our Town Partnership to analyze and interpret the City of Wichita's Percent for Art program and public art commissioning processes, and to build a toolkit designed to expand access and address barriers to entering the public art field for local artists. Dunwoody is an activist at heart and sees skateboarding and street art as forever intertwined with his Native identity and an opportunity to share his culture as an urban Indian. Ella Monique Bacchus is the Executive Director of Arts Partners in Wichita. She earned her master's degree in art therapy from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and was a licensed clinical professional counselor in Chicago for over 10 years prior to relocating to Wichita. Ella is also has also designed and implemented over 30 public art projects, and she serves as an appointed member of the City of Wichita's Design Council and Arts Council. Chris Garcia is an artist and muralist who received his BFA in graphic design from right here at Wichita State. He founded Brick Mob with his wife, Nicole Rocco. Brick Mob has grown into an 11-person crew that collabs on multiple events, festivals, and public art projects throughout the region. They're proudly Miss Western and support local businesses when sourcing materials for their projects. If you haven't heard of Brick Mob, please Google, check out their website. They're kind of everywhere doing great work in this city and area. Thank you. And Connie Fiorella. Connie is a muralist and public arts administrator based in Lawrence, Kansas. Her work reflects her Peruvian heritage, where she lived until age 10, and focuses on projects that build cultural equity. She is the first Kansas National Association of Latino Arts and Culture Fellow and project manager for the People's Markets program with the Kansas Creative Arts and Industries Commission that utilizes mural making with ethnic grocery stores to build community. All right, that was a tongue twister. Okay. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic to Armando, and we're going to get started. Please, let's give them a big, warm welcome. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for coming out this evening again. I see a lot of you that were here last time, so thank you for coming back. As you can see, we have a pretty weighty panel, right? People that have a lot of influence in shaping the arts, not just in Wichita, but in Kansas. So thank you all for agreeing to do this. I'm always sending you weird messages about doing weird projects. Thank you for hanging with me. Okay, well, to start the conversation, and we'll just kind of pass these two mics around for everyone, okay? I just want to ask, why murals? Why paint on walls? I know that some of you are more focused on graffiti, some of you are more focused on mural making, but why intervene a wall? Whoever wants to go.
Yo. I find that painting on walls kind of, well, obviously it looks good. Everybody wants the city to look better. But it kind of just invites the conversation about whatever the subject matter is, even if it's just your artwork plain or you're trying to make a statement. It kind of leaves your views out there, kind of forces your audience to think differently about whatever you're portraying there. So I think it's really important just to start the conversation there. Even if they may not agree with you, it's invoking some emotion out of them. It's making them think and hopefully guiding them towards more of an open mind. So I feel like it's a really important step for everybody to begin to really understand each other.
Cool. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I guess I can throw in. For us, for me personally, before we started doing commission murals, we did it for a local mural festival that's now over with now, Avenue Art Days. But after our first mural, I realized two things really quick. One, the artist that made the art, well, there was 5 of us that painted it. The feeling that he got from seeing his art in grand scale was just something you can't get anywhere else. You know, and we did festivals and events and stuff, selling T-shirts and prints and our art, but to have something on grand scale was just amazing. The other side of it was, as we were painting it, all the people that came up to embrace it. I mean, from rich to poor to everybody in between, and everybody loved it. Or like you were saying, they have something to say about it, and that's good. It breaks down class barriers. So, cool.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I think it's one of the few, public arts and muralism is one of the few art forms that is accessible for anyone at any time of the day. Even at night, just need a sidewalk and walk by it. You don't need a ticket. You don't need to be in a crowd or dress a certain way. You can be, with your sandals, flip-flops, and just walk by and check it out and vibe with it. But one of the reasons that I am interested in muralism and public arts is to have a say on how my community looks like. And I'm also interested in others figuring out how their communities looks like through their lenses and having a diverse views of murals and sculptures, all kinds of public art that looks different, has different stories, and is reflected of those communities. And I think that's the main reason why I'm interested in public arts and muralism, because there's a McDonald's or a Burger King at every city, every state, but what makes it unique is how you make your city unique, and one way of doing that is with public arts and muralism.
Sorry. For me, murals is a way to do community engagement, and I think the first mural I ever made, was when I was a teenager. My mother let me paint in my room, the wall in my room. She was very awesome. And so I wanted to give that same opportunity to other youth, and it's just a way that I've been able, it's like low-hanging fruit. They're not as intimidated by that. You don't have to have all the technical skills, so it's been a way that I could engage people and then change the way the community looks and feels. Like that's a big part of it. And the people that are in the community informing what that looks like, that's also really important to me.
Well, let's kind of pull on that thread a little more. I know that community is a part of all of your work with muralism and public art, maybe through the process or the message even that you put on your work. And Ella, you mentioned community engagement, that being a really important part of your process. Well, let's talk more about community engagement and why that's something important to you in your practice.
So when I came to, before I lived in Kansas, I lived in Chicago, and I worked with a lot of at-risk youth. And this making murals, making public art was a way to keep young people engaged. And we're really doing art therapy. We're really, they wouldn't necessarily come to counseling. If I said, come to my office and talk to me, I'm your therapist, they wouldn't do that. But they would like come to an after-school program and paint with me. And then they'd be like, well, I'm not really an artist. But the day that they were like, oh my gosh, I did that, I'm an artist, I mean, like their self-esteem. And then when we put the work up on the wall, they were like, you're really gonna put that up? Like, yeah, didn't that, like, they didn't believe that it was gonna happen. And then even doing this work with youth that have been involved with the juvenile justice system, when their names went on there, it didn't say anything about that. It was like they could have something that represented something good and they contributed to the community. So yeah, it's been a way that, it's been a microphone, to uplift stories and voices that wouldn't otherwise be told, but also, like I said, to be a point of connection so we can do some community mental health. We can heal a little bit. That's the other part.
Chris, I'm thinking about community, I'm thinking about Brick Mob. I mean, you guys are literally a crew, right? And it seems like there's new people that join the crew, and it's a family that it feels like it's growing. How did it get started, and why a crew? I mean, you're a designer, you know how to paint. Why go the route of having a team to work on projects?
To kind of help, I realized a need as I was getting to the end of my degree here at WSU. There were a few of us that had jobs, some of us that didn't have jobs, really didn't have any plan. And I kind of had the idea to put something together as a collective, because it's easier to help stand each other up than it is to try to do it by yourself. So we formulated the idea, 4 of us came together, we started the crew, and then because we got the chance to do our first mural through that Avenue Art Days, we all fell in love with it, and that was just, it was go time. And then we realized, okay, we can get, as we grew as a collective of artists making murals for commission, we realized we can get these done faster if we have more people. And we can help more artists in the community too. So we only have local artists, we hand select them, we looked at what they do. I know I'm in WSU right now, but it's not necessarily your education. I want to see what your capabilities are. The first thing we ask on our resume is our submission is, let's see your pieces that will speak to us. And that's what we want to do, is help local artists. So
there's an audition process.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Nice. Thank you. Rick, continuing with Thread and Community, because I got familiar with your work through Connor Lang, I think early on when I moved here. And since the first time I saw some paintings she did on canvas and some skateboards that were painted, there's always the imagery, right, that speaks to your own background and ethnicity. And with the mural that you did for Horizontes, there was a specific message, right, about objectifying people. Can you share more about why you're using, why are you continuing to talk about your community through your art, right? Why is that important?
Yeah, sure. So to me, I feel like that project specifically too is, it's kind of a chance to give a voice to kind of the muffled people out there where their voices aren't exactly heard as much. Kind of an unpopular opinion. It's kind of like validation for these people to see, and kind of as what I was saying earlier about just making other people think about it as well. So it's kind of a lot of things where, Indians, they're all gone. Nobody's worried about them. It's just an afterthought. But the fact of the matter is that we are still around. And so I like to take opportunities like that to try to help push those voices forward to where they're not exactly hiding behind everybody's general thought. So a lot of it to me is help building these, youth is specifically for me. I feel like the imagery used, to depict Indians and kind of in those ways are diminishing to like a young adult's mind, because it's constantly telling you, you don't matter, your feelings aren't valid, we're not worried about how you're seeing yourself. And it's kind of a thing that nobody would really think about. They're like, oh, it's just sports, get over it, it's fine. But that kid who's sitting there, you know, terrible home life, has to see it pushed down his neck every day. So it's just an opportunity to show people that there are like-minded people out there and forcing other people to think about that. So really, it just kind of like validates their feelings and makes them feel like a whole person. So I think that opportunity with artwork is very important, to try to just uplift the people who, you know, are down bad. So.
Yep, and thank you. And for you'll see some of the images of that specific mural we're talking about. It'll play on the slideshow. And just to give you some context, it has the different sports mascots that still use indigenous imagery, well, people as a mascot, right? And they're crossed out with X's. And interestingly enough, I had some people reach out thinking that the mural had been defaced. Because you have the logos and then they're kind of crossed out with red marks. And people assume
I love that.
That somebody, yeah. That's something that to me is really interesting and powerful. Right? It's that conversation that you were talking about, right? That there is some precedent in that neighborhood and in this community with some murals being defaced before. And I've always seen it as that. It's a conversation. And how we are able to navigate the conversation, I think, is where transformation can happen. And in that topic, I'm really thinking about a specific project with you, Connie and Lawrence, that involves a lot of opinions, a lot of ideas of seeing the public space, right? Even questioning architecture and the value that architecture has to different communities. And there was a mural that you worked on in Lawrence, right, with Public Library. Can you tell us about some of the learning lessons that you had while working through that?
Wow. I think that was one of the hardest projects I have ever done, to be honest. I wouldn't say it's like, it was a big turning page in my artist career. And it's a loaded question.
Just pull it apart.
Okay. Well,
Well, let's talk about architecture, right?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
walk into this building just a little bit ago, and you notice that this is like a brutalist building, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of concrete, and immediately I thought about the library in Lawrence when they
Yeah.
built it, right? And
Yes.
so can you talk about
Yes.
just architecture and how it's perceived?
Yes, so just some background. I proposed a mural at the Lawrence Public Library, which is an award-winning building, and the outside concrete part, the exterior wall is made out of board-formed concrete, which this building is also, I noticed, which is, are there any architects here? It's a precious concrete. So there was a lot of tension about painting on that. So I designed a project without permission, and I just asked the city of Lawrence to allow me to paint in that building, and then I got in the newspapers, and there was a lot of back and forth between folks who really love architecture and love the library. And so the mural was a woman of color mural, local histories, and depicted a variety of local women of color. And they just didn't want that on the board form concrete, this award-winning building. But the library is a place for everyone. And historically, a place where there has been segregation and lack of storytelling and lack of access for women of color and folks of color, multilingual folks as well. And it was a really big fight. So I have a lot more to say, but it's what came out of it was it was eventually installed thanks to a lot of community involvement, petitioning. The media helped a lot. But there's this idea of like what matters most, telling untold stories or preserving award-winning architecture. They're both arts, but one of them has been historically and continues to be oppressed, and the action of crossing that line of like, okay, let go of your shell of this award-winning architecture and just let it be, so this woman can paint black and brown faces all over the facade.
Yeah, I think there's always racialized bodies are politicized, right? And especially in the public eye. And I can help but think of a similar experience that you and I had while trying to get permission to paint the murals that you and Ella painted on 13th Street. It's a train underpass on 13th Street near Topeka, and for those of you that know the area. And it's a city-owned surface. And we had to go in front of Design Council to present the designs and get permission for this from the city of Wichita. And this is one of the murals. And in that process, Design Council was like, well, there's a neighborhood association. It is a historic part of town. In beautiful Victorian houses. It's a historic midtown. And they wanted us to go back to the neighborhood association and get their blessing. And we did that. It was a meeting at a church in the area. And it was really confronting, right, to see people from that community making not very covered comments about, right, having certain people depicted in those murals, right? They talked about a legacy of the neighborhood and the history and the historic value of the neighborhood, right? Because it is a historic midtown and the beautiful Victorian houses have been renovated, right? There was like, but what about the history here? What about the legacy of this neighborhood, right? And those are dog whistles for, this is a white neighborhood, it's been historically white, and we would like for it to depict only white people. Right? Assumptions were made, right, about Connie being Mexican, right, in that same meeting. Anyway, it was a long meeting, and at the end of the day, we ended up getting their letter of support. But that's something that often is not seen, right, as people who are constantly occupying public space, whether it is actually publicly owned and private, people get to see it. There's often this pushback on who gets to be depicted. And I see that in all of your guys' work. Yeah. You gonna say something?
Yeah, I feel like they're like you say, murals create this conversation, this push and pull, and often like the mural at the library or this one, when there is racial tension and there is some space to shed what you're holding as I guess the status quo and how things should be, there's a space for beauty and growth, even if it's painful for both sides. They're letting go of what they think this neighborhood or this city should be like, and then the other tension in the other side is going through that discomfort, like myself, of being confused by being Mexican, and so there's discomfort in both. But I think at the end of the day, if things turn out well, it's a positive.
Yeah, it's a stretching that happens
It's a
internally
stretch.
and with the community. And, I think about your mural, Rick, and of course the North High School, you're a graduate from North High, and, they've had the name for a long time, and recently in the last couple of years, they finally changed their mascot and the imagery after years of debating that, right? I like to think that the mural in the neighborhood where North High School is, that talks about that, maybe has something to do in changing minds and hearts, but hey. We'll let people figure it out.
Go Redhawks.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So just to kind of close this part of, on engagement and community and the growth and tension that we have, there was a reflection that you had, Ella, on your piece when you were designing the piece for the bridge. At the time, there was, in the media, there was a lot of conversation about migrant and refugee children from South America and being in cages, and it was sort of like consuming all of the media air, and you wanted to create a specific design that addressed that. And there was a moment that you came to me and were like, are we perpetuating this pain, or are we healing the community? And I thought that was a really powerful reflection about the power of images. Could you talk more about what was going through your head as you're coming up with, you're going through your design process, there's this topic you want to address, and then you realize that maybe this isn't it?
So that's a piece. It's like you want to make something healing, but it's a static image. So it's not like you can tell, how can you tell a story, but then you have one moment, one image to say it. So that is always a challenge to figure out. Like me, like I said, I'm thinking about how can I make something healing. When people see it, they feel something, even if we're from different places and different cultures, we don't speak the same language. Like on a human level, you can be like, okay, I can connect with that. So one of the pieces was, we just had the eclipse, right? And I was thinking about that because one of the pieces is a sun man and a moon woman, and their faces make an eclipse, and it's supposed to be like the woman is pregnant with the earth. So it's like no matter who you are, the fact that you exist, that you were born, is like a special moment. It's rare, right? So it's like everybody is valuable and precious. And the other one was a conch shell, because everywhere on the planet where there's water, people blow the conch shell, as a beginning of something, the ending of something. And so a lot of people come here from all over the world, and that's not celebrated. This is a place to start over. It has a sunrise in the conch shell, and so that's what it's supposed to represent. But yeah, how do you talk about all those things in a way that like people can embrace, and then it can be a healing or calming thing that they see? Yeah.
Yeah, that is a real, I guess, a struggle that for someone like me who for a long time has been really focusing on social justice and public art. Eventually, I guess there was a hubris maybe early on in my work where like we need to get the message up on the walls, not really thinking about the static image, right, and the continual harm that it can produce in a community. I think about myself and my work being immigrant rights activist for several years and kind of telling my own story over and over and over and over in front of all kinds of people, some of whom were not sympathetic at all. And then at one point realizing that it's like, I'm just keep re-traumatizing myself every time I'm telling this really painful story. And it does the same thing with public space, right? It's like, what the purpose of it? I think it's really something that we get to wrestle with in creating. Yes, go for
I have
it.
something to
Go
add.
for it.
Okay, so I did the one that says Justicia para Mujeres Inmigrantes, and it's titled Justicia para Madres Inmigrantes, Justice for Immigrant Women and Mothers. And that piece was hot. It was hot. It was like there's some heat in it, and that was my first and last. And it took a lot for me to do that, and then that was it. I personally, my like, talk about re-triggering yourself, like it's a story that of my family, of my mom, and it will continue to be the story of my kids and all the generations that will come after them. But I realized through doing that work, it's really important, and at the same time, it is, I'm more interested after doing it once, and more interested in being more futuristic, shedding that idea of the immigrant story. I am more interested in digging of who I am through food, through music, through beauty, in other forms of beauty of who I am, who I want to be, and that was a big one. That was a really big turning page for me.
Thank you for sharing that. So there's a story of transformation there, right? Personal transformation, the transformation of your work and how you see it. What has been the process? How is just? I'm thinking about Brick Mob and the beginnings of Brick Mob, right? And then now you guys have made some really like incredible giant murals. What has been the transformation for you personally? Not Brick Mob, but you as Chris Garcia in that process when you started almost a decade ago painting murals and now.
Well, a lot of speed bumps, personally. For me, it was taking care of our artists was the most important part of our collective, making sure they get paid accordingly what they should. Anybody who comes and paints with us, even if they're like volunteering or we do stuff with the public, we try to, give something back to them somehow. We had an intern that worked with us for a little while. We paid them too. So being able to support local artists is a very big thing for me. So it means a lot. And just the growth in general, like I think we screw up on every mural somehow. And you learn something along the way with each one, whether it's technical things or something maybe I should have billed them for, or I should have put that in the contract that you can't change the colors 2 days before we start, that kind of thing. So I think it's just, and I hate to say it, but I guess I'm an adult now, and I don't think I was at the beginning. And just over the years, I think we're on our 10th year now. I think I finally got this thing figured out, and that it feels good to be able to work full-time. My wife and I own the company. We both work full-time doing this, and we can support our kids and our house and help local artists. So, and we're making our city better looking, so can't
That's
beat that.
amazing. Yeah. Okay, Rick, what age did you start making graffiti?
Graffiti? Shoo. Probably, well, it kind of went just with being kind of a bad kid skateboarding. When I started skating when I was 9 years old.
So bad.
So it was like, a lot of just running the streets at night and just, so really, really young, like 13 maybe, when we were just, nobody was really worried about where we were at. So we were just anywhere and everywhere. So, once that sun goes down, you're still out skating, sometimes you find a marker and, starts just writing your name, was here, and then it just graduates and keeps the snowball effect to where all of a sudden you've been painting for years and years and years. So it's really hard to pinpoint, but painting graffiti and skateboarding and doing all that, I still do those things now.
Yep.
So even though it's been 20 plus years, but I think I got a different approach. I'm not as much, I haven't ran from the police in a very long time, I'll say that much.
Been there. How do you think the graffiti scene in Wichita has influenced muralism here? Artists, aesthetics, any part of it?
Yeah, greatly. I think there's been a lot of great walls that were around that aren't like the electric chair used to have an awesome wall that they would always repaint. It's kind of unfortunate to see that that's not rolling anymore. But guys like Slim and then these other fools have great connection of people that they keep it rolling with a lot of good murals they are posting up, even around small cities around here. So it is like a jump between being in the streets, painting on trains, to actually painting on buildings, but it's initially the same thing. It's the same practice. It's the same art, just one, you're not going to get arrested for, but it's great, and I would love to see just more and more and more of it.
Graffiti specifically, yeah. I agree. It's great. Okay, since we're talking about graffiti and, think about urban spaces mostly with graffiti, but there's a conversation that has been happening a lot for a few years now. You see it a lot online, but I think it's also now a conversation in art spaces where it has to do with the role the artist can play in gentrification of neighborhoods, right? And as I understand gentrification, it's a process of a dilapidated area to be renovated, right? Not necessarily good or bad, it's just a thing that happens. However, there is sometimes, depending on what that gentrification happens, there might be some displacement of people, right, who inhabit those areas. And we see it all over, right? And there's many studies out there about connecting public art and artists being hired by developers and all of that. I think it's a really important conversation to continue to kind of pull on. It's a complicated topic, I believe, but I just kind of want to take people's take on it, right? Like, what do you think it's the role of an artist when it comes to quote unquote cleaning up a neighborhood or revitalizing a neighborhood, however we want to name it, and anyone can answer it.
I know personally with us, anytime we do a project and they bring us on board to create something, a lot of times we have guidelines that we have to somewhat adhere to or suggestions of what the art should be. We don't get to do truly art just for art's sake all the time. But it is paramount that we dig into the community that mural is going to live. Look at the history. We actually have she has a master's in history and anthropology in our crew.
Nice.
Yeah, so I just say, hey, dig up some dirt, see what you can find. And I don't know how many times she's found stuff that even the city didn't find, or whoever it is that commissioned us. And we've gone toe-to-toe over some stuff, too. We had one with the city, and I shouldn't say it was blow for blow here, but I made it very clear in the beginning that if we couldn't represent, this is in reference to the baseball stadium mural, there's actually a timeline on the bottom that you walk up to and see. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with the way the Dumont Stadium was before. On the corner, they had a nice little presentation of all the teams that have played here in Wichita, but it was only the white teams. So I made it very clear that our crew is not going to do this unless we can represent every team that's played in Wichita. So we made a point and sent her on her way, and she dug up all the teams, even the ones that are a little bit dicey on what they were named. I think one was the Mexican Midgets, the Monrovians.
Different time.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? Embrace it. They played here. They loved it. So let's show it. That's our history. So make sure and represent.
Yes. Anyone else going to take a stab at that question or statements that I made?
Yeah, I'll jump in a little bit. That I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Is just research, because about how you put it, where you're quote unquote cleaning it up with artwork and stuff, and then relating it right back to graffiti. The graffiti is most likely already living in that area at the time, so it is kind of a counterbalance there between using that to do so, but importantly is the research, obviously the deep history, but also what was that neighborhood or community doing. You still want to do justice by the people that are being displaced there. So you want to make sure that you're representing that portion of people as well. So like a graffiti would be a great way to do that, because this is what they were always surrounded by anyways. Obviously, it doesn't have to be, racist graffiti or anything like that. That might have been around in those seedy alleyways, but I think, just the research and just get to know the neighborhood and what was actually going on, so that you're not coming straight out of left field, no baseball pun intended, when you're trying to do that. You want the people to still have sense of ownership when they can look back on this area and be like, yes, this is representative of what was going on here, and kind of celebrate it in that fact. So yeah. I think it's very important to do your research and know what was going on in that neighborhood. But yes, using art to class up a place, I'm here for it.
Nice. Anybody else want to say something? Go ahead.
We were about to do rock, paper, scissors. Two things. One, I've experienced that whole gentrification thing happening all around. I lived in an artist live workspace, and I'm pretty sure that's why they put it there in Chicago. But the neighborhood is not, it was a war, basically, to gentrify the neighborhood. And I don't think it was just the art, that it was a whole, there were levels of systemic racism and things that happen. So that is the beautification of a community. That affects how people feel about themselves. Like if you go outside and there's broken glass and trash everywhere, you feel a certain type of way. And one of the things that I wish was here, when like I used to live on Madison, you drive down Madison and you saw, everything from stuff about the Chicago Bulls to things that depict African American history and Latino culture. I mean, it's like you could drive down one street and you would know where you are, like who is there because they're represented in the artwork. And that felt like, wow, this like you made this really your home, So I wish there was more of that here, where people could have an opportunity to see themselves reflected in the murals. Like, well, that's my grandmother up there, moved here, and such and such and such. She was the first person in Wichita. Like that matters to people to have that marker of cultural history, even if they go and come back. It's just, I don't know. So I think gentrification is a multi-layered system. It's not just about like you paint murals and then now people want to move into this place. It makes the people who are there, who have been there, feel invested in. That's the whole thing when you have blight is divestment. Like we don't care about this area. We're going to throw those people away, but they need beautiful things too. Yeah.
I think I love what you said, especially like you driving by and like you can kind of like see who lives there, who's there, what they're like, their colors. And at the same time, I feel like those placemaking or projects are really maybe more of a systematic way of, I guess what I'm trying to say is, give me a second. Are there any arts administrators here? Or yes.
Yes.
We know. Yeah, I mean, other than
Yes.
everybody in the panel and folks here. But so I think that there's a lot of projects and funding for placemaking. And I would love to see more projects and funding for broader ways of being, and not necessarily tied to, this street, this corner, these walls, like this is where it's hot, like I think that there needs to be a little bit loosening up to allow for arts to be all over the city and for funding to be all over the city. I think maybe it's more a systematic way of thinking about it. I would prefer that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because often the funding that is connected to those placemaking projects or, with art comes from foundations, right? And in my experience, something I've seen is almost like trends. Like you see something trending in the philanthropy world, and then all of these foundations suddenly start pouring money into very specific things, right? And then a few years later, there's a new hot thing that is happening, and then they pour money into that. And but like you're saying, it's very focused on this location, this space, this thing, and that's something that I know there's been some pushback now. There's more pushback with foundations about letting artists be artists and supporting artists rather than supporting projects, which I think is a big difference, right? That we have the skills, we have the connections, we have the ability to do these projects. And often there's so much, we got to go through all these institutions just to get any kind of money. It's like, fund the artist. So if anybody in the audience is in those spaces, keep saying that, fund the artists. We can make it happen. Okay, so thank you for sharing all of that. I want to make sure we leave a few minutes to make some questions. So I kind of want to start closing the conversation, and I want to ask you, in regards to muralism in Kansas and Wichita and the region, what do you envision, right? If you could have access to anything that you would need, right? What vision do what do you envision muralism specifically becoming Kansas or in Wichita if you're focused here, or in Lawrence?
Specifically in Wichita, I would just like each community that is involved with the public that they interact with, with other people and youth. I'd like to see all of them have their own mural that's going on. Like, prime example, I know I'm a skateboarder, but the park downtown, I mean, there's probably some illicit stuff getting painted down there every now and then, but coming down, sandblasting it, ruining it for all the kids to skate, takes all the days, and if you just let them do it and just have actual artists come and paint, and you could have rotating artists or whatever, it'd be respectful, but it would look amazing, way better than the drab gray that it is, and it would just, it would stop a lot of that negative graffiti as well, because it would have people, you can't get all of it away, but there'll be people who will respect the artwork as long as it's good stuff. So I think I'd like the idea of more community-based murals like that, where it's like, okay, just all they have to do is let them do it. Like, you don't even have to pay them. These people will come and paint. I'll be there. I know 8 people that'll go there right now. It's like, so that one's just easy, no brainer off the top. But any place
free
that
art.
wants it, exactly. I think that would be. I would love to see that. That's a great vision I have for Wichita. But it doesn't even have to be skateboarding stuff. Like, I'm sure a pickleball court would like a splash of color. I don't know. There's plenty of those. So.
It's the hottest thing. For any city administrators in the room, take notes about graffiti. Okay, anybody else? Chris, what are your dreams? What is your vision? You got everything you could possibly need. You got it.
I want to paint the whole city and then repaint it and then repaint it again.
Gray, buff it gray, and then paint it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I want color as far as the eye can see. I want Wichita to be known for its murals. I want us to make some landmarks, and we already have the largest single painted mural by one person. Let's do more of those. Let's break more records, and we can.
There's so many grand elevators.
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of blank walls around town, and we have plenty of amazing artists. I see multiple artists out here in the crowd that need to be getting more work, and that's what I want to see more of. And speaking to that specifically, and the project-based thing you mentioned earlier, I hope that there's more support for actual artists, not just we want the Wichita flag on the wall, or we want the skyline, or sunflower.
Yes, that.
Let's think beyond those things. I think it's great to embrace those icons as a city. Absolutely. We're Kansas. We got wheat. We got sunflowers. We got cattle, skylines. What else have we painted? The Keeper. But we can do more than that. And I want to see more of that. I want to see real art. I want to walk around the corner and see a 30-foot tall penguin, like, I don't know, eating a donut or something.
Right.
It's something unique and cool. Yeah, true art for art's sake. And I think being able to support that up the chain would help considerably. I think a lot of the, like, RFQs and whatnot, they're convoluted, hard to understand, or they package in a lot of different projects, so it's kind of daunting for people that are up and coming. So I hope that we can break down some of those barriers for people too. So
nice. Great. Any millionaires in the audience? Make sure you fund the artists. I don't know. Worth a shot.
I want to say one more thing too, just from the side of project RFQs and like public art projects where they request certain things. I've been seeing a large influx of projects that require artists to submit art without getting paid. And to me, that's disgusting. I mean, you don't go to an architect and say, develop my house, and then when he's done, say, nah, I don't like it. I'm gonna hire somebody else. No, it takes time. Even if it's just a little stipend, just something to show that we are valuable. Okay, now I'll go.
Yeah,
Clap to that.
for sure. Yeah, I almost don't even apply for this. Yeah. I would say I think for the general public, if you have connections to walls, pair them with artists. You know, like, I think that's something that the Wichita community can do. You know, it's like, you don't have to be an artist yourself. You can be a connector. Like, we are all looking for walls.
All the time.
All the time. I mean, sometimes I drive around and I'm like, that wall. It's a good wall.
There's a lot of really good walls in Wichita.
Yeah. So connect us to walls.
Again, any millionaires in the room that own a lot of property, let us know.
Something that I'm really, really excited about. So I am contracting with Kansas Creative Art Industry Commission to do for a project that's called Independent Markets Initiative. It just changed its name from People's Markets Program. And it pairs culture-specific retailers, so like Mexican tiendas, like Indian markets, Asian markets, to artists that are of those cultures or connected to the diaspora. And we started that in Lawrence. We did 5 grocers, and now we're moving to Garden City and hoping to come to Wichita.
GC3 ICT.
Yes, but the idea, like my dreams and hopes, is that Kansas is seen as like with a beautiful public art scene, and also celebrating food and culture and access to food and access to culture-specific foods. And for folks that don't go to those grocers, to check it out, you know, you like treat yourself to new snacks, like. Especially the Asian markets, there's just so many flavors of chocolate that I didn't know could happen. But yeah.
Nice, thank you. Ella?
I think what I heard everybody say, there's this thing as an artist where you, like, you have a desire to make your mark, right? And then even just the process of painting, it feels good. You know, I mean, it just feels good to paint, and you want to leave a mark. You want to be like, I was here, you know, or whatever it is that the mark is. And I want as many people to experience that as possible, not just artists, because it feels good. It feels like healing and right to create something, you know. So I want more, not only artists. Absolutely, artists need more opportunities for sure in Wichita all day. But even people who aren't artists, when they have a taste of that, they're like, dang, we need some more of this. It's like a thing. So I think if they had the chance to put their hands on it, too, then we would have more. People who aren't even artists, like, give me an access point. Help me understand why this matters to me as a non-artist, you know? So that's a thing. And then also what you guys were talking about as far as, like, to depict our community as a global community. I don't think people, they have the stereotypes because we keep using the same icons of the keeper and the flag and the sunflowers and the cattle, but they don't recognize that this is that everybody in the world is here. Like when you go in those schools, it's the whole wide world. And that's hidden almost. It's not celebrated, you know? So I want that to be celebrated through the art that's in our community. Like, I want to learn about a culture I never knew, you know? I want to have to dig deep, and I want some little note on there that tells me history. It's like an access point. Like it's like an appetizer, or maybe I eat the dessert first. So it's something where you're like, oh, I want some more, you know? Like the art draws you in, and then you learn something deeper that you didn't know. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, I love that, and like I want that for us because we are so multicultural, and also to celebrate Midwestern art beyond sunflowers too, because this is gonna sound a little weird, but when I moved to the Midwest, one of my favorite things, I was in the Rotary Club, and we
Nice.
had potato bars. And I am from Peru. Like, this might sound like so normal for you, but I love potato bars. I love potato bars. If like that could be celebrated somehow, like a potato bar mural, or like just like it would be so beautiful. I would like have my birthday party in front of it with a potato bar.
It's like lean into it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for putting that in the universe. Because I have a feeling it will happen. Okay, we got a few minutes to take maybe a couple questions from the audience if anyone is interested. Up there.
I'd just like to thank all of you. It's been a very interesting and very enjoyable experience, and thank you very much for all of you for the work you're doing. And you project a happiness and a aliveness, all of you, that seems very nice. You mentioned you're from Chicago and you're from Peru. The other three of you, I don't know your hometowns. If all of you would like to talk about, I see you say Wichita, both of you. But I don't know about you, Armando. Do you come from?
I grew up in Mexico.
Yeah, I'm a Spanish speaker, and I've been down to Mexico, and I've been in Ecuador when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. And so I just say, right on to all of you, and keep it up.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody? No? Yeah?
Art can be very political and not to invalidate anything you're talking about because I think it's very important. I love those murals when I drive under, through them. But there's a lot of other problems too in this world, like climate change and women's rights. Do you see yourself putting up murals in any of those areas too, which can involve ethnic groups, of course, because they could suffer more than, minority groups could suffer more than anybody else in this society.
So you're talking specifically about women's rights and climate change, okay? Anybody working on anything like that?
Yeah, Douglas County is about to have the first climate action plan adopted this summer, actually. And we're hoping to have a mural to accompany it. So looking for artists.
Nice. And Douglas County is Lawrence, right?
Yeah,
The
Lawrence.
seat.
But I'm bringing that up because, like you mentioned, like there's trends, there are things that are hot at the moment. And right now, what is hot, not just the climate, but right now,
Took me a second.
it's there's a lot of development of citywide, countywide climate action plans that are paired with public art, dance, murals, sculptures to talk about the story in other ways than a printed 40-page plan. So it'll be cool
Great.
if you guys could be next.
I was going to say the candid conversations that happen. Jamie Nix from the Wichita Public Library and Lindsay Banaka from the Cultural Arts, they have this idea to do these conversations based upon public artwork, and it was about Chester Lewis and dealt with all these different topics about housing discrimination and redlining and segregated schools, all these really important topics. I think more of that is really good. It's like art as a catalyst for conversation, like conversation people wouldn't otherwise have, that they most likely wouldn't avoid. Like, let's talk about it. Like, this is the artwork and let's discuss, So I think that is a really powerful way to address some deeper issues is you create artwork, but don't just leave it at that. Let's talk about it. Let's have forums like this and discuss what does that mean and where does that come from?
Yeah, which I just want to give a shout out to the Orridge for doing just that, right? It's really great to hear from artists and directly and talk about other things other than the slides, right, on the computer. So, Orridge, yay! Okay. One last question that anybody has? It could be about anything, process, what you had for dinner. Yes.
What about the longevity of all these murals? I mean, somebody mentioned about paint them and then repaint them or whatever, but what's going to happen to them 10 years down the road when the paint starts falling off? Or will it? I don't know.
Great question. Thank you. Anybody want to talk about your own approach to that or philosophy with ephemeral public art?
Personally, as an artist, and I speak for all of us here, you want your art to last as long as possible. You want it to survive and make your mark, as someone said. For us, we make sure everything we do, we research the wall, we get it tested, we check to make sure we have the right primer and all the stuff that we need to do to make sure it's going to last as long as possible, the best paints and all that jazz. Because, we don't want to, if you put up art that's just thrown on the wall, but you didn't do the research to make sure you're using the right stuff, it's going to fall apart quickly, and then that in turn makes our city look like it's falling apart. So I think it behooves all artists to do their due diligence to create the best that they can.
Real fast. I think people have different intentions with their work, though. Like what Rick was talking about, where you have a space and people paint, and that's there for a while, then somebody else paints. You respect their work, and then it rotates. Like it's meant to evolve. It's meant to change over time. It's not. It's supposed to be fast and exciting and dynamic. And every time you go there, you don't know what it's going to be. So there's art for different reasons. My training was as an oil painter. When I went to school and I had friends who did public art, and I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to get dirty. What are you talking about? I can look good and paint. What? So I over the years, I guess the most recent project, finding other ways to translate oil, like with me, oil paintings into something, other materials that are more permanent. So it could be outside. That was a thing. So that's also there's always new technology. There's always new ways to make our work last and become something else and evolve. And now it's 3-dimensional and all those things.
Yes?
Why not digitize, take pictures of it, and then make a compendium with commentary by the artist and indicating something of the history and the ethnic involvement in this, so it becomes a legacy?
Sure. I'll just say to close that, we love that when it's possible. It's always a question of funding, right? It's time and energy to do all that work. And again, any millionaires in the audience who wants to fund artists, let us know. Okay, well, I think we're out of time. I want to thank everyone again for being out here this evening, for everyone that joined us. I really encourage you to go and look at the exhibition, at the different exhibitions in the Orridge. If you haven't so, you'll see the work of these 4 artists in the mural section of the exhibition. And there's some new pieces of artwork that everyone has created in town. Ella, you were talking about the oil paintings. I know that's a reference to the Chester I. Lewis Park downtown. If you haven't gone to see it, please do so. It's a great example of how we can use public art to tell the story of Wichita and the people of Wichita. And also, as an artist, right, how to expand your own process from oil painting to glass and sculpture. It's a really cool project. So with that said, thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and everyone in the audience. Thanks. And that's it.